introduction to the curtain?
We are a Profit Insight. Mike Arian, co-founder and CEO of Profit Insight. Profit is a healthcare analytics and machine learning company that helps hospital leadership and other executives to better understand what we call post-diagnosis clinical decision making. So once you have a diagnosis, what do they do?
What does the patient do?
What does the physician do?
What does the physician do?
And then ultimately, how does the patient respond?
Okay.
So if we're looking at healthcare right now, everybody's familiar with Obamacare and the shift to Obamacare, but everybody more focuses and understands the side of access and cost of care, which is more the public side. But on the back end, physicians and doctors, the reimbursement model is getting completely reworked. So they're going to be paid now not for the number of services they provide, but for the quality and financial cost of those outcomes.
Right. Outcome-based health services.
Now, both physicians and the hospitals are going to be at risk and their payments will be tied to those outcomes, which is great. But hospitals specifically in this case have no idea what the physicians are doing ultimately, and have very little, obviously, since they don't have an understanding, it's very hard for them to influence what those physicians are doing. Physicians, on the other hand, have good data, but it's limited to their patient pool. What if they had better data to see what was working across, let's say, a much larger patient pool, both in and out of hospitals?
So I hear you saying that ultimately you have these big health systems, health conglomerates, if that's an appropriate word, and then you have all the doctors and specialists that are associated with those organizations, but they're operating roughly independently. Is that
correct?
Correct? Okay.
And the hospital by law can't tell the physician or require that they do something. It must be influenced to make that change.
Well, I spent 7 years in the pharma business, and so I'm real familiar with the Sunshine Act and FBA and other, how the whole regulatory landscape has changed precisely to protect a physician from inappropriate influences that we have now determined are inappropriate. Great. But then how do we move from there? How are you helping healthcare move from there to an outcome-based process?
Because, good question. So everything we are doing is to show that what the hospital or whoever is asking to do it is leading to a better outcome, and that we have the data to prove it.
Okay.
So that's your great question. So the ultimate idea is to understand, for example, that physicians are using, on average 2 to 3 days of Foley catheter days for every knee replacement.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, that's not leading to the best outcomes and is costing adding an extra cost. So if you can present that data and influence and show them why it's better ultimately for that patient and their outcome, then you can help to influence change.
And that's what Profit Insight does.
Yep. We provide them with the data and provide them with the tools to influence those decisions. It's still up to the hospital to execute them, but yes.
Right, but you're bridging the gap, right? Between
Correct.
The independence of these two groups.
Correct.
So to speak.
First, we provide visibility to the hospitals as to what their physicians are doing around specific conditions. So what are the services that they're using for a total joint? Are they doing them here? Are they not doing them here? What medications are they using? Are they utilizing physical therapy, etc.? And then to see, again, what's the overall cost for that specific physician, as well as their outcomes.
Sounds like a data integration challenge across the board.
90% of the issue that we dealt with was data related. Both data integration, because we are pulling data from clinical systems, from financial systems, from patient sat and other systems, but the way that data is structured today in healthcare is different. Well, and
this is a techie conversation where it's supposed to be, so feel free to get techie.
So data in hospitals is in an electronic medical record, which is basically the ERP of the hospital, is all aligned around a specific physician, right? Patient. So you have a patient, they have encounters, Here's all the services they've had. They have diagnoses. They have charges. They have bills. It's good. That's a good start. The two problems are, one is it's not aligned for what we call cross-population analysis. So like, show me all the patients who had this primary diagnosis and.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yep.
And two, it's not. It's aligned around the patient in its entirety. What we are really doing is all the metrics I was trying to discuss are around a very specific episode. So you have a patient. Maybe your mother is going in to have her hip replaced. Okay. I see that she had her hip replaced, but she's elderly. She may also have other comorbidities. So let's say maybe she has diabetes, maybe she has dementia. We've seen patients that have 9 or 10 other comorbidities. So at that same time, I see all those services. But if I'm trying to track what happened to that patient for that hip replacement, how do I know that that lab was for TJR and not for a weekly glucose draw? So we can accurately count cost and do a variety of other things. Because healthcare hasn't cared. They just track it all. So 90% of what we did at first is what we call episode grouping those by episode, so we have a high level of confidence that the services we're including are relevant to that encounter.
Gotcha. Okay. So a lot of it insight, I was about to say, hence the name. So how does the Salesforce platform enable you to bring this to bear?
So where we started with Salesforce, that's an interesting question because people don't get the connection, is more on the influence side, right? So we're saying, look, to that point, they can't just say, okay, we found it. Now, Mr. Physician or Mrs. Physician, you need to change this, right? Dr. Smith, you're using too many follow catheters, cut it down. They can't do that. They have to influence or convince them of that. And that happens over time. So we basically align that with a sale. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's towards a positive outcome, but we have created the majority of our components are in Sales Cloud. So we actually utilize Sales Cloud opportunities. We call them relationships. We've customized the sales process to identify an issue, present the data, and additional steps to help them influence. We call it our influence engine.
Right.
We're tying in related content to bring that in, and a variety of other things, and to show that, hey, we have data, but also here's the best practice from the AMA or Medical Society or whatever. Here's a study out of Harvard that just showed. So again, this is all data and ongoing conversations to see, and then we are tracking as a reporting snapshot at the start what their metrics were. And as we're tracking that relationship, we're seeing what changes and what doesn't.
Right.
And we can see both, obviously, what the impact on the outcome is, as well as what the impact on those activities are having on that.
And I'm hearing that Sales Cloud is like a linchpin there to bring those kind of things
We're
together.
completely built on Sales Cloud in that aspect. But that's only one part, because things have obviously continued to morph for Salesforce. So they came out with Health Cloud a couple of years ago.
Right. So where do you see that going? And what's your relationship with Health Cloud?
Yeah. So actually, we work very closely with Health Cloud. Health Cloud is focused around improving patient relationships with their physicians and care coordination and communication around a specific care plan. So that's exactly what we're trying to provide the metrics on top of. So we are really if I put a better word on it, right now, a management add-on, right? A management visibility and physician performance add-on on top of Health Cloud. They have physicians who are using Health Cloud to manage care. They can see what they're doing and then try and influence those decisions.
So you've been in communication and working with the Health Cloud team at Salesforce?
Yes. And we actually, at HIMSS, the big healthcare conference earlier in the year, we're one of the top 14 Health Cloud partners that were.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's been good, and we're talking about some stuff for Dreamforce. But yeah, our entire data model is actually built on Health Cloud and has expanded to support our additional needs. We then feed that data over to Sales Cloud, and then all of our data visualization is actually done right now in Einstein Analytics.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Well, let's talk about Einstein and machine learning, because I understand that's a big part of your value proposition.
Yeah, so we actually started Prophit with the hypothesis that we could use machine learning to analyze the hospital system's current data assets to identify network leakage and care plan compliance in real time.
Network leakage being they started in network and then they continued their care somewhere else.
Or physician is utilizing services outside of network, whether in its entirety or part. For example, you have a physician who's doing total joints here, but is using a lab that's outside of network.
Right.
Care plan compliance would be them saying, even though the industry or the best practice suggested by the hospital is to do both inpatient, outpatient rehab, they just say, I don't think it's any outpatient rehab's any good, and they just don't do it. So they don't care, they're not compliant to the care plan.
Right.
So we utilize machine learning both to understand what the current or most common pass or set of services are, because a lot of times, especially as things get more complex like oncology, so forth, they don't have any idea what the physicians are doing, how they're treating these patients. So we can first show what the normal path is, and then we can see where each physician deviates from it. That was the genesis of what we did. When we got in and had a lot of those data issues and had to work through them, we realized that we could also, since we're in here and digging through the data and grouping it, we're able to provide a variety of other analytics. So that's where, rather than doing AI for network leakage and care plan compliance, we're now doing that as well as what we call episode of care analytics.
So once you started applying it to that scenario or use case, so to speak, you realized there were a lot of other applications for machine learning at that point.
So that's where we are today. Tomorrow, not tomorrow, but in the future, our goal is obviously we're capturing all this information on a variety of different data points, right? Number of Foley catheter days on telemetry, for example.
Which machine learning platforms are you using, not to capture, but to do the analysis? You mentioned Sales Cloud, Einstein.
Yeah.
That's going to give you certain features that you leverage. I'm curious to know which ones. And then, of course, you're doing some other things. I'm sure you have some custom models.
Yeah, so we're actually not doing any. In phase one, we didn't do any of our machine learning in Einstein.
Okay.
It was all actually based on both TensorFlow and a variety of just libraries that were out there that can actually be used in Einstein as well.
Sure.
Our issue is that we're a little more specific. We are doing pattern identification in structured data. A bunch of the use cases are out there right now are around sentiment analysis, or around NLP. They're around image recognition.
Well, those are certainly the APIs that are available now.
Well,
right. At least.
So it didn't lend itself fully to what we are doing. Our goal as being part of this is the expectation of the incubator is that we will be shifting at some form or at some time to utilize more of the Einstein when they open up more of the full platform, which is not available today. But what we're currently evaluating is, in the meantime, do we run Prediction IO on either Heroku or AWS, and then eventually shift over, because we've had some discussions with the Einstein team, including Simon Chan, who was the founder of CEO of Prediction IO. He said it's coming, but it won't be here yet.
Yeah.
And
let's give a shout out to the Einstein team while we're here, because their participation in the incubator has been A, very valuable, and B, very they're invested. So I know I've appreciated getting to know many of the team members. And
absolutely. No, look, it's the
Yeah, and that's full stop.
I think the issue is that is a positive one, is that Salesforce sees the value and has put a lot of weight behind it, right? So everything it's the year of AI, as they announced, but it's still a work in progress as they bring together both Prediction IO, MetaMind, and a variety of other different things. So they're doing as quick as they can on a use case basis. They've obviously released some cool things that are in product. What I mean by that is like Einstein for Sales Cloud for doing lead scoring and a variety of other things.
Exactly. I call those Einstein features within the various clouds.
Then they are now releasing obviously several APIs. released the image recognition, sentiment. There was another one.
Intent.
Intent.
Two sides of the NLP.
Yep.
Yep.
But what we're trying to do, like I said, is something much more specific. So either, most likely, is they're going to eventually release it as a more of a general development platform that you can utilize whatever library you want, etc. It's just waiting for that to come out.
So tomorrow, what's next for you then?
It is utilizing machine learning combined with the outcome data that we are now collecting. So I have all those metrics. I'm going to have outcome data. What I mean by outcome data is both how much did it cost, the whole encounter.
Yep.
How much did I expect it to cost, if we're talking a bundled price or somewhere around that, or a fixed fee. I have what the patient sat was, patient satisfaction. I have patient reported score. So in the case of a needs, the really two main complaints are going to be lack of mobility and pain. So what is the
so you're taking all these
before or after? Yes.
You're taking all these outcome
metrics. And we want to know which one of the metrics we're tracking are leading most to the positive outcomes. So then we can actually track and start predicting and saying, hey, here's your in-process procedures that are going on or conditions that are at risk because they're not, these metrics aren't in line and they're not following the proper outcomes.
So let me throw you a softball. You ready? So, there's a lot of hype around machine learning, artificial intelligence. One of the things that is, promise is that they're going to make everything, they're going to revolutionize things, make things better. Do you see the future is very, very bright for artificial intelligence in healthcare, moving toward an outcome-based approach?
Yes. And
how far are we? What kind of changes are we going to see in the future?
Yeah, so I mean, today the discussion around AI is all about basically the robot armies taking over, or more specifically, a computer replacing a person's job.
Yeah, Black Mirror.
Which eventually, technically, could be a concern, but that's going to be decades away. Okay. Today, though, there is a bunch of things that can be applied through machine learning that are very hard for humans to do today. So to empower people to do their jobs better. Let me give you an example. So at Bay State, one of our current customers in the healthcare space, they have put together they had three initiatives. They said, we want to focus on improving care around COPD, DKA, which is diabetic ketoacidosis, or an extreme case of diabetes, and critical heart failure. They have put together care plans and protocols saying this is the best way physicians to treat their patients. They have, and they want the goal is to have their physicians follow them and see how it helps at the end of the year. They have no idea which physicians are following them or not. Right. They literally are bringing in residents to pull charts and do manual chart review to see, okay, this is a DKA case. Did they do X? But on the other hand, we can then put that in and say, here's the expected decision tree. Right? So if they presented here, this was their glucose level, we gave them this much fluid, what happened, then if then this. So
you're bringing a lot more insight into
we can automate that whole thing for them that they couldn't even do now. Or even especially in the case of healthcare, it's some of the analytics is still very difficult for them to get beside even just machine learning. So
it sounds like a lot of challenges.
Yeah. Foley catheter days. They're literally, if you want to know how many times they go into the file and they look manually to see, okay, they had this, Mike was in, he had it in for 2.5 days.
And you think the operating culture of hospitals and healthcare systems will be able to adapt fast enough to leverage the promise?
Because they're trying to get this data anyway. They're doing it manually.
So there's a lot of motivation.
Yeah. So we heard that on Tuesday, and by Friday we had it in the demo for them, and they were jumping up and down.
Nice.
So no, I do see a lot of, but to say that, I didn't say once in there that a machine would replace a physician or caregiver. Nope. I said that it'll allow them to get better data and insight than they have today.
And we're talking 6 months, 12 months now with Prophit Insight.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, we're out of time.
Okay.
Mike, thank you so much. This is
Thank
Mike
you.
Arian from Profit Insight. If anybody wants more information about Profit Insight, where do they go?
ProfitInsight.com.
There you go. Couldn't be simpler. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. CRM
you.
Science Incubator Weekly. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
Arian.
Sean. Good. Happy Friday.
Y'all, yeah, happy Friday. Y'all have a good week. Bye-bye. Awesome.
Is that good for you?
Mike, it was great.
Good.
I only